It is, it's so easy to go through our days entirely insulated. Like, you
Yeah.
wake up in a climate-controlled room, you drive a climate-controlled car to a climate-controlled office.
Right, the perfect little bubble.
Exactly. And if anything disrupts that bubble, like a late delivery or a slow Wi-Fi connection or even just a cold breeze, it feels like an absolute crisis.
Oh, totally. It's the end of the world.
Yeah. But what if the very things we are striving for to make our lives easier are actually, the things deadening our spirits? Our mission today is to tear down that insulation for you.
I love that. We're tearing it down.
We are diving into a single dense audio source today that maps out a really profound human journey. And it's centered around this concept called the 15th gene key. So, okay, let's unpack this, because you're hearing gene key and picturing like a biology textbook. We really need to clarify what we are actually looking at here.
Yeah, that is a crucial distinction right out of the gate.
Yeah.
The source material uses the term gene keys, but it's not talking about literal DNA manipulation.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's a synthesis. The author blends ancient systems, like the I Ching, the ancient Chinese Book of Changes, with modern astrology and archetypal psychology.
Wow. Okay, so it's like a conceptual map.
Exactly. Think of it as a framework for understanding how our psychological states evolve.
Yeah.
The 15th gene key specifically charts a path from a state of stagnation up through a transformative stage and finally into a highly paradoxical form of ultimate realization.
Okay, I'm with you.
And it starts with a rather stark premise. Basically, in our modern world, we are suffocating ourselves with convenience.
Suffocating with convenience. I mean, it is a bold claim because I have to admit, I work a long week and I genuinely love my convenience.
Oh, same here.
I love my air conditioning and my seamless food delivery, But the source frames our starting point on this map as the shadow of dullness. And I think it's important to clarify that this dullness isn't like the peaceful, smooth simplicity of a Zen monk meditating by a stream.
No, far from it. This dullness is described as a kind of spiritual death. Yeah, it's the stifled imagination. It's what happens when we seek the comfort of the crowd, so to speak, and shirk our own self-responsibility. It manifests as endless repetition, overstimulation through meaningless trivia, and this absolute paralyzing terror of being wrong.
Just entirely stuck.
Right. If your life is rigidly structured to avoid any spontaneous change, the source warns that you are deeply caught in this shadow.
And to really illustrate how pervasive this fear of the unpredictable is, there's this great anecdote in the source about an architect.
Oh, this is a great story.
Right. So the author of our source is having their house redone, specifically replacing these old wooden window frames to make them look more elegant. And the author explicitly asks the architect to intentionally design the new windows so that they leave a draft.
A request that completely baffles the architect, of course.
He actually laughs. He tells the author that no one has ever asked him for that in his entire career, because the whole goal of modern home building is to seal out every single draft.
Like they're an absolute plague.
Exactly. The source points out that we treat drafts like they're invading demons. We're spending fortunes to live inside these non-breathing, plastic-lined boxes. It makes me think about how we try to hermetically seal our lives like Tupperware, to keep everything perfectly preserved.
It's a perfect analogy.
Thanks. But humans aren't leftovers. We need to breathe. We need the air to move. But I have to push back a little here. Is our pursuit of a draft-free house actually making us fragile? Or is it just, smart engineering?
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of that fragility. When you seal a house perfectly, you stop the air from moving. The physical environment becomes entirely static.
Okay, that makes sense.
Drafts keep air from stagnating, and they also give rise to the creaks and murmurs that make a house feel alive, rather than silent and sterile. The author argues that a house is a living ecosystem that needs to breathe, just as our bodies do.
So without it, we just go numb.
Precisely. When we remove all physical microstressors from our environment, our nervous system actually loses its resilience. We dull our senses.
The sensory deprivation of modern luxury.
Yes. The author notes how we numb ourselves not just with perfectly sealed windows, but with our everyday habits. Like, we eat before we are actually hungry, completely missing out on the physical sensation of emptiness that gives the eventual meal its edge.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are. We throw a fit if the price of fuel goes up a few pennies or if a restaurant order is 10 minutes late. We have lost our edges because our comfort acts as a giant, suffocating quilt filled with goose down.
A goose down quilt. It sounds incredibly cozy until you realize you cannot breathe underneath it.
Exactly.
And this desire to blunt our edges isn't just physical, it is a deep psychological trap. We try to seal our minds the same way we seal our windows.
We absolutely do.
To illustrate this psychological insulation, the author shares a wild anecdote about a psychedelic experience they had while living in a small, isolated cottage in the Scottish Highlands.
This is such a vivid story, and it perfectly encapsulates the internal mechanism of this dullness.
Okay, so the author is entirely alone in the Highlands. They pick some magic mushrooms growing right outside their cottage door, brew them up, and embark on this journey.
Right.
But before it kicks in, they make a strict pact with themselves. Whatever happens, they are going to maintain a smile. They attempt a meditation practice called the inner smile with the explicit intention of facing whatever chaos comes their way like a totally unfazed Buddha.
Which, sounds like a noble, enlightened intention.
Right. I would do the same thing, but the source reveals it was a massive error. As the author is sitting there in silence, eyes closed, holding this soft smile, they suddenly feel these tiny creatures.
Here we go.
The author describes them as demons or goblins, and these goblins have actually fastened tiny grappling hooks and ropes to the corners of the author's mouth.
Wow.
They are actively, aggressively pulling down on the smile, trying to force the author to drop the expression.
The imagery is incredibly striking, but we really need to look at what is actually happening in the brain here.
Please do, because the author describes being caught in this terrifying mental battle, thinking, I cannot let go of this smile. If I let go, I fall into complete chaos.
Holding on for dear life.
But the irony is, the absolute moment they surrender and stop forcing the smile, the goblins vanish completely. The friction just disappears. Why does that happen?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism here is psychological resistance. The author was practicing what we often call spiritual bypassing.
Oh, I've heard that term.
Yeah. They're using the inner smile not as a genuine expression of peace, but as a defense mechanism. Basically another sealed window to keep the scary drafts out.
Ah, I see.
Those goblins with their grappling hooks represent our own repressed anxieties and the chaotic realities of life. When you force positivity in the face of chaos, you create immense internal friction.
So the resistance itself creates the demons.
Exactly. The moment the author surrendered to the raw reality of the experience, the illusion of control shattered, and the resistance the goblins evaporated. It proved that the smile was merely an outer mask, not an inner state.
It is the trap of forced positivity. We think we are being enlightened by smiling through the pain, but we are actually just wrapping ourselves tighter in that suffocating goose-down quilt.
Perfectly said.
The source states bluntly that true nature only reaches us through discomfort, through suffering, and raw reality. We have to let those metaphorical drafts into our psychological house.
We have to.
We have to be willing to take off the armor of comfort, to experience the world as it actually is, because avoiding suffering just traps us in dullness.
And that leads us to the critical threshold of this map. If the shadow is dullness and the trap is our desperate clinging to comfort, how will we actually break out of the Tupperware?
Yes, how do we get out?
The source points to the next evolutionary stage, which is the 15th gift, termed magnetism.
Magnetism. Now, I want to pause here because when I hear someone described as magnetic, I picture like a Hollywood actor walking into a room, superficial charisma, a booming, bubbly personality that just commands attention. But the source is extremely clear that this is not what it means.
Not at all. It is a completely different frequency. True magnetism in this context is not about drawing attention to your ego.
Right.
It is a deep, mysterious resonance that rises from the core of your being. It's described as a force that genuinely loves all aspects of creation. And the author makes a point to emphasize that this includes the stars, the birds, the rocks, and the garbage dumps.
Okay, let me stop you there. I have to play devil's advocate for a second. Loving a garbage dump. Loving the toxic, ugly, or frankly destructive parts of humanity. Practically speaking, how does someone do that without just being completely delusional or engaging in that exact same toxic positivity we just talked about with the goblins?
That is the pivotal question of this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
How do you find beauty in the ugly without faking it? The source answers this not with abstract theory, but with a highly specific practice of radical empathy. It requires looking at the garbage dumps of human behavior and actively seeking the context beneath them.
And there is a brilliant story in the source that explains exactly how to do this. The author talks about a former girlfriend. They would be out together at a bar or a restaurant, and this girlfriend would spot someone across the room who looked entirely uninspiring.
We've all seen someone like that.
We're talking about someone visibly repressed, drab, or even overtly angry and scowling.
The exact type of person you would instinctively try to avoid making eye contact with.
Right, the person you want to sit far away from. But instead of ignoring them, this girlfriend would actively lock onto them with her imagination. She would look at this angry stranger and start building a narrative out loud.
Just making up a story about them?
Yeah, she would imagine their life, the specific heartbreaks that led to that scowl, their weird little oddities, their hidden struggles. She would actively dream their humanity into reality right there at the table.
That's beautiful.
And the author notes that by the time she finished her story, anyone listening would feel a profound sense of love for that weird, angry person across the bar. It is like she was reverse engineering a stranger's humanity. Is this something anyone can learn to do, or was she just uniquely gifted?
The author presents it as a muscle that can absolutely be developed once you step out of your own dullness. This is the core mechanism of true magnetism.
So it's an active practice.
Very active. Notice that she didn't have to walk over and actually like the angry person's personality. She didn't have to endorse their scowling behavior, but through her imagination and her heart, she felt their essence. She resonated with the shared human experience of suffering and found something worthwhile.
And the text points out that doing this requires a massive amount of humor. You cannot take yourself too seriously if you are going to actively look for the magic in the monotonous, mediocre, and drab corners of society.
Humor is the solvent that dissolves the shadow of dullness. And this brings us to a slightly more technical but vital concept from the source. The 15th gene key is part of a larger genetic and energetic grouping called the Ring of Seeking.
Okay, Ring of Seeking. What exactly are we seeking here?
Well, in the context of this map, the Ring of Seeking is a collective drive within humanity that pushes us toward betterment. But what makes the 15th key unique is that it doesn't seek betterment just for the individual. It seeks advancement for the whole.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's described as the most benevolent of all the archetypes because it transforms personal love into universal service. In Eastern traditions, this mechanism of serving without expecting a reward is called karma yoga.
Karma yoga. So if I'm understanding this right, it is like doing the absolute most grueling, thankless volunteer work, not so you can put it on your resume, but because the very act of connecting with the gritty reality of other people is its own reward.
That is a perfect modern translation. It is action driven by profound connection rather than personal gain. And the ultimate mythological embodiment of this concept is the bodhisattva.
Which is a really beautiful concept. For anyone unfamiliar, the bodhisattva in Buddhist tradition is a sage who has done all the hard work. They have achieved the right to ultimate enlightenment.
They've reached the pinnacle.
They have the ticket to merge with the divine and finally escape the endless, painful cycle of human suffering. But when they get to the finish line, they stop.
They don't cross it.
No. They intentionally decide to turn around and hold back. They delay their own ultimate reward to stay behind in the messy, drafty world to serve and teach others.
They are the ultimate expression of that ring of seeking. They stay in the trenches because their empathy is so vast that they simply cannot leave anyone behind.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because you would assume that the final highest state of this journey, the ultimate evolution of this bodhisattva energy, would look incredibly majestic.
For sure. You picture them glowing on a mountaintop.
Exactly. If you reach the peak of enlightenment, surely you are radiating pure, untouchable, holy light. But the source introduces the final destination on this map. It is called the City of Fluorescence.
Yes.
And Siddhi is basically a Sanskrit term for a spiritual power or ultimate realization. But this realization presents a massive paradox. Fluorescence isn't about being overtly holy at all. The source defines it as extreme modesty and extreme ordinariness.
It completely subverts our cultural expectations of what spiritual success actually looks like.
The author poses this brilliant thought experiment that totally reframed this for me. They ask, if you were a god and you decided to come down and experience life as a human, what costume would you wear?
That's a great question.
If I am being honest, my ego would want to be a charismatic leader or a revered guru with thousands of followers. But the author says, if you were truly a god, you wouldn't do that at all.
No, you'd hide.
You would play tricks. You would conceal yourself as an entirely normal, flawed, everyday person. And you would work your magic entirely behind the scenes, influencing the world on incredibly subtle levels. So wait, the ultimate spiritual flex is just pretending to be weak or average.
Well, this raises an important question about the nature of true power. In many ancient traditions, true power does not elevate itself above the crowd. It grounds itself beneath it.
Fascinating.
To explain this, the source references the mystical Tibetan kingdom of Shambhala. In their esoteric maps, Shambhala is a hidden kingdom, and at its very center is Mount Meru. But Mount Meru isn't a mountain reaching up into the clouds. It is a mythical inner mountain.
Wait, inner?
Yeah. It represents a structure of immense strength buried deep within the earth.
A mountain inside the earth that completely tracks with the I Ching reference the author drops here, right?
Exactly. The 15th gene key corresponds to a specific hexagram in the I Ching, which translates to modesty. But the visual symbol for this hexagram is literally a mountain within the earth.
That is so cool.
It signifies a massive, immovable presence that is entirely hidden beneath a flat, ordinary surface. And the author takes this ancient symbol and connects it to a modern scientific concept called the Schumann resonance.
Okay, wait, pause. Schumann resonance. The source calls it Gaia's breath, which sounds highly poetic, but what is it mechanically?
Mechanically, the Schumann resonance is a set of spectrum peaks in the extremely low-frequency portion of the Earth's electromagnetic field.
Okay.
It is generated and excited by lightning discharges in the cavity formed by the Earth's surface in the ionosphere. It pulses at roughly 7.83 hertz. It is, quite literally, the baseline energetic frequency of our planet.
Wow.
The author uses this physics concept as a metaphor. To achieve this ultimate state of fluorescence, your personal frequency has to sync with the Schumann resonance. You have to harmonize with the literal dirt and atmosphere of the Earth. You don't transcend the world, you vibrate in perfect lockstep with it.
And when you reach that state of deep, grounded harmony, the text says the fruit falls back to the earth.
You're right.
The greatest sages don't stay on the mountain. They come back down to the village. They become utterly ordinary. The source even notes they might behave a bit madly or unpredictably because when your inner foundation is that strong, when you are a mountain inside the earth, you are totally free to behave spontaneously.
And this requires us to fundamentally redefine the word modesty. We usually think of modesty as keeping your head down, not bragging, maybe a bit of social humility.
Being polite.
Yeah, but the source argues that extreme performative humility doesn't feel human. It feels forced, like the inner smile with the goblins. True modesty fluorescence is about staying aggressively human. A profound teacher might deliberately act petty, weak, or angry just to make the people around them feel comfortable.
That blew my mind. The idea that a truly enlightened person would allow you to believe they are flawed simply as a means of loving you and staying connected to you. Because if they acted perfect, they would end up on a pedestal.
And a pedestal is just another form of isolation.
It is another plastic-lined window.
Exactly. They use any human behavior as a Trojan horse to deliver illumination.
Now, I do want to address something that might make some of our listeners roll their eyes. The source gets a bit esoteric here, talking about how beneath the ordinary surface of these people, their aura is a rippling, resplendent field of multidimensional angelic color.
It sounds like pure fantasy if you're a skeptic.
Right. But if we ground that idea, it is really just saying that their true impact is invisible. You cannot see the profound empathy and benevolent weight they carry, but you can feel its effects in the room. They don't anchor this massive energy by levitating. They anchor it by staying as close to humanity as possible.
It is mysticism brought down to the physical dirt beneath our feet. The author explicitly warns the listener, do not allow yourself to become too holy.
Yes.
The moment you feel superior to the messy reality of life, you have slipped right back into the shadow of dullness.
And to really hammer this point home, the source brings in a fascinating historical figure, Hildegard von Bingen.
Oh, I love her.
She was a 12th century German mystic, composer, and philosopher. Despite her massive spiritual influence, she lived her life incredibly close to the earth. She coined this Latin concept called viriditas.
It is one of the most beautiful concepts in the text.
Viriditas translates to the power of greenness. The source describes it as the tangible, fecundly life force of nature. It is the raw vitality you feel emanating from plants.
It's so visceral.
The author points out that you can literally see viriditas when the sun shines directly through the green leaves of a plant. They seem to glow with this healthy, giving, dynamic life force. It is the exact opposite of the stagnant, draft-free room.
And this brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this entire map. To embody fluorescence, to reach this ultimate state of ordinary magnetism, you must immerse yourself in the force field of viriditas. This is why the source makes the profound claim that the holiest people on earth are not the gurus on the mountaintops. They are the gardeners.
The gardeners, the people with dirt under their fingernails.
Because the gardener works directly with the earth. They understand the power of greenness firsthand, and more importantly, the gardener intimately understands the mechanics of rhythm.
You cannot rush nature.
No, you cannot yell at a seed to make it sprout faster. You cannot pull on a stem to make it grow. The gardener knows that you just provide the soil, the water, and the time. Everything comes at its proper pace. All beings, no matter how drab or ordinary they seem right now, will flower in the end.
So what does this all mean for us, sitting in our climate-controlled cars and perfectly sealed houses? If we trace the map we've just traveled, the 15th gene key is essentially a set of instructions for coming back to life.
That's a great way to summarize it.
It asks us to step out of that perfectly preserved Tupperware box of modern comfort. It asks us to pry open the windows and let the drafts of raw reality and discomfort back in so our nervous systems remember how to feel.
To feel everything.
Yes, and it challenges us to look at the people around us, especially the difficult, frustrating ones, and actively reverse engineer their humanity through radical imagination.
It is a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It moves us from seeking an escape from the messiness of the world to embedding ourselves as deeply into the dirt of it as possible.
The next time you're annoyed by a drafty window, a delayed meal, or a grumpy stranger sitting across from you in a cafe, consider this. What if that specific friction is exactly the edge you need to stay awake? And what if that entirely ordinary, flawed person sitting next to you is actually a hidden bodhisattva working perfectly behind the scenes? Keep your eyes open for the greenness and maybe just occasionally take your shoes off and dance amidst the gold and the green.